It's Jefferson, climbs the ladder. Oh my goodness! Justin Jefferson pulled it in. He's got another. 4 on the... He's in for 6. 61-yard touchdown run by the quarterback.
Catch, rookie on rookie. And what a catch with the right hand.
Escaping, on the move, Mahomes stops, spins, flips it forward for the touchdown to Edwards.
Walker on first down, moving to his left. And now Walker fires downfield, looking for DJ Moore. Oh my God! Makes a diving catch for a Panthers touchdown. Wow! 62 yards.
Hello and welcome to the 2022 FFL season recap show, which we will talk about season recaps, playoff predictions, and some highs and lows of this FFL season by decisions made by the managers as well as performances by the players. With me is co-host Ben Holloway. I am Andrew Holloway.
Commissioner to you.
I do apologize.
Yeah, so we'll dive right in. We're going to do a bit of a playoff recap to start, talk through what the playoff view looks like. The app should be up to date for everybody, but also just talk through the losers bracket. I know there's some confusion because you guys have lost so much this season. It might be confusing to think about trying to actually win games now. Looking at you, I guess Bengal. You know, for all season the tank was on for Talladega, but down the stretch, Drew Capel did much like, his physical posture, just kind of came up short, if you know what I'm saying. Kind of just consistent all season long. So end up as the bottom seed in the losers bracket. So looking at the winners bracket first, the bracket that really matters. We've got Possum Grape up top, just dominated the West, dominated really the whole FFL all season. The number 1 overall seed, number 1 seed in the West. The play-in game in the Western Conference, you got Portland Thundercats. One of the best franchises we've got in this league. Just unbelievable turnaround this season. And the Boulder Bravos are going to be the first team to lose in the Western Conference playoffs. Jumped out to the East, you've got the St. Louis Iron Thumbs, who are basically the East Conference lovers of the Possum Grape Scramblers. You've got the Baghdad Reaper drones, who have been, shooting missiles all over the league to end the season, making crazy trades, still find their way in the playoffs. And Buenos Aires, who was basically gifted a playoff spot in the last week. And those two are playing the play-in game. I talked about it in our message earlier this week, but just a recap of those of us that are still alive playing for some money. There are some parts of the rules, so depending on how much cap space teams leave with at the end of the season, there will be $1 given for every $10 in remaining cap space, so that'll change the pot just a bit. But what you should see is the winner of this bracket should see about a $275 payday. So I'm looking forward to that hitting my account. Second place will be about $150, and the season overall high point, which will be Possum Grape unless somebody turns it on over the last 3 weeks of the season, will be $75 there as well. So that's what's at stake for us. Skip down to the losers bracket. You got first round buys from Talladega and Bangor, who were discussed previously. Bangor is going to be playing against the loser of the Eugene Machine and the Dusseldorf Summer Sausages. So those two will be facing off. Loser of that game will continue to advance. So in the Sacco tournament, losers continue to advance moving forward until we have an ultimate loser, the ultimate Sacco of the league. As a reminder, the winner, or I guess loser, of the Sacco bracket is responsible for paying for our draft party next year, in addition to for one hold wearing the outfit of the choosing of the remainder of the teams at a golf course. Nobody took advantage of that last year, so I skated by free, but you better believe I'm on the top side of the bracket, and I'm already shopping at Amazon trying to find the right thing for you guys. On the bottom side of the bracket, Talladega will play the loser of Richmond and Amarillo. one other important reminder for those in the losers bracket. The person seems to continue to win. If you place 7th place by winning out of this bracket, you will have the best lottery odds for your playoff finish. So you do not want to lose anymore if you are trying to tank for a number 1 pick in Bijan Robinson. So that's how the bottom of the bracket looks here. One other thing, final note, is these weeks do also count towards high points. So there will still be a $5 payout to the high point winner for each week. So even if you are on bye, make sure to put your best available roster in so that you can still have an opportunity to cash in on $5 if your team outscores anybody who had an actual matchup. So before we dive into some playoff predictions, I want to just go ahead and with Andrew and I, we want to walk through the FFL's not top 10 of the season. A lot of you guys really just crapped the bed this season, and we want to make sure we highlight each of those things. So I'm going to kick it over to Andrew. Andrew, if you can start us with number 10, kind of work your way up to the most egregious of the mistakes that we saw around the league this season.
So number 10, and we're not going to dive into specific manager decisions, transactions, free agent signings, or even player performance. I'm going to single out an entire franchise. The Eugene Machine is number 10 in my not top 10. The entire season was essentially a sham, and they almost got away with it too. 8-6 record, worst points for in the conference. You guys know I'm big
point score guy
opponent. All right, I will live and die on that rock. One of the lowest in the league, and somehow 8-6 record. Hardly faced any opponents all year that actually gave him any run for his money, and he still came out with a measly performance and did not qualify for the playoffs. This is not a shot at manager Branch Terrell. This is not a shot at the individual players of the Eugene Machine franchise. It is instead saying the Eugene Machine, the name itself is preposterous. It does not make sense. How is your mascot Machine? If anything, you are the Eugene Machines. There are multiple players on this team, unless you are claiming that you are one giant mechanical machine that each part is knitted together to make this. The name itself belongs in this not top 10, probably higher on the list. But the fact that this franchise was the lowest scoring team in their conference, somehow acted like they deserved a place in the playoffs. I'm simply glad that the fantasy gods did what they do best, and they righted the wrong. They righted the wrong. They gave him the record. They'll have that argument to make, but the Eugene Machine had no business being anywhere near the top half of this conference, top half of this league. So my not top 10 is simply the Eugene Machine season. What was it? What could it have been? Nothing. There is no name. There is no purpose. Eugene Machine, number 10. Write it down.
Number 10. Jumping into number 9, I'm glad I have you on the line here, Andrew, because I think an easy pick for number 9 or not top 10 finish, it really starts before the season begins. Buenos Aires thinking that they're landing the biggest blockbuster of the century, picking up Cooper Kupp. Let's remember, giving away DK Metcalf, giving away 2 first-round picks, building what he considers a dynasty, and completely limping his way through the season. I mean, Buenos Aires, it was an embarrassing showing all season long. If you want to go check the stats, you can find that DK Metcalf has actually scored more points than Cooper Kupp this season. So not only did you give away more points, you gave away 2 first-round picks during the process. Your team basically has no future. The one player you invested in, Jonathan Taylor, looked terrible. Austin Eckler did show up, RB1 of the season. And to have the RB1 of the season and barely squeak by the Richmond Wankers, which, God, we'll talk about that team later. It's just really an embarrassment to the league. I was disappointed. I mean, if you had been in the Western Conference, you'd be looking at probably a first-round bye in the losers bracket. If not, I mean, you would have been kind of the punching bag of the West, lucked out in the soft East. And, I mean, just from an ownership standpoint, you insult just Eugene. I'm coming right to the GM on this one. This had nothing to do with the franchise. Nothing to do with the players, just a horrible mismanagement of the assets on the team. So, I mean, 9 is probably generous. Probably could have gone lower. Fortunately for you, there were some really poor decisions made elsewhere. So that's number 9.
I will respect your opinion, but I will disrespect your thoughts because they are wrong. Simply, this franchise was pieced together with the mindset of star power wins fantasy football. I've never heard anything other than star power wins fantasy football. Going into this season, these 3 players, Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp, Austin Eckler, were projected to be 3 of the top 4 scoring players in fantasy football across all leagues. The fact that I went forth with that decision, I stand by, and I will stand by it until.
Is this number 8? Is this number 8 on the list?
This is not. This is a fall.
Okay, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead with number 8. We don't have all that.
We'll move on to number 8. We will finish the conversation at a later moment, potentially still during this live stream. Number 8. I will go on and I will say that my number 8, and it was a toss-up, but number 8, I would give to the Baghdad Reaper drones for their decision made on July 24th on a Sunday of all days, the sacred day you make a poor decision on. July 24th, 2022, when they traded a 1-year contract of Nick Chubb at $100. Excuse me. They traded for a 1-year contract of Nick Chubb at $100 for gave up Tyreek Hill on an $88 contract for 3 years. Yes, it was to the Portland Thundercats. So I applaud you. For that. You offshed the Nick Chubb circus. All right, the Kareem Hunt Nick Chubb duo, whatever that is, for a contract that, frankly, I think is under market value for Tyreek Hill, considering the season that he has had to this point. And also secured that for 3 years and offshed a 1-year contract that was actually $12 more in cap space. So number 8 is Baghdad Reaper Jones trading away Tyreek Hill on a money contract, not the best savings in the league, but a money contract for potentially the best wide receiver this decade. I know Cooper Kupp. I love him. That injury's really hurting him. Traded him away for a 1-year kind of stop and shop, Nick Chubb. So what happens if he does go nuts? You've got to re-sign him. You got to franchise him. At the end of the season, you didn't extend him when you traded for him. So I'd say Cameron Terrell with the Baghdad Reaper drones really lost the battle on that one. Really let it slip. And it was a big name for a big name. It was a simple swip and swap, back and forth. But I think at the end of the day, considering the season that Hill has had and the potential of years going forward with Tua as his quarterback, their chemistry is going to continue to grow. I think Tyreek Hill at $88 would have been a steal for Cameron. And now instead, as you see, we're letting a shoddy manager handle him for the next 2 years. So that would be my number 8.
Okay. Number 7, it's a bit of a toss-up. There are a lot of big mistakes made by individual teams in the league, some very poor decisions made throughout. But I think really, we've got to talk about the training staff in the NFL. To have 3 straight weeks where a starting quarterback goes off the field on a stretcher to start the season, I'm just disappointed at the lack of care for fantasy football as a whole. The fact that, we're talking about players like Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo. You had Tua that looked dead on the field. He's back playing, but I don't know about that. So nothing to do with the FFL players or teams, but just an embarrassment to fantasy football as a whole. It's tough that we can't have some consistency with our players. There's a couple teams out there that look like they've had a lot of injured players with the way they finished the season, even though they didn't, just from the poor records. But overall, I'd say the entire NFL let us down a little bit. It's really, the sky's the limit when you think about where Portland could be if they weren't hamstrung so heavy at the beginning of the season. And all that to still finish 100 points on the season ahead of Mr. Points guy, Andrew Holloway. That feels like a bit of a win. But it could have been 200. You never know. So that's my number 7 there for sure.
Alrighty, and number 6 for me. Number 6 comes down to, got to scroll over to find it in my notes. All right, would have to go to the Boulder Bravos decision to trade with the Talladega Knights. The Boulder Bravos gave up 2 second-round draft picks as well as a third-round draft pick, and in return got what? Am I reading it right? Marquez Valdez-Scantling? That is true. That is correct. 3 draft picks. Not 1, not 2. 3 draft picks for Marquez Valdez-Scantling. All right? He traded as many draft picks as this guy has names. All right? And probably as many draft picks as he has receptions on the year. I couldn't even find the stats as I looked him up. There's nothing. There was nothing that he brought to the table this year. Marquez Valdez-Scantling for not 1, not 2, but 3 draft picks. That alone, that floored me. I'm doing my research, trying to figure out, okay, who's my top 5. I see those numbers. I say, surely I'm reading it wrong. Surely not. Surely not.
3 is also the number of weeks that MVS has scored under 3 fantasy points since that trade. 3 weeks under 3 points.
There we are.
With 3 draft picks. So, yeah, 100% on board with that. That was on my list as well. I had it further up, but I think this spot is fine. Embarrassing decision. And the fact that MVS really came over from Portland to Talladega for basically as parts of just a larger trade, dumping salary, and then turn around and flip that. Pretty good management there by Talladega, who otherwise the season really embarrassed all of us.
Agreed.
Okay, that puts us down to number 5. Is that right? Number 5 of the season. This is unforgivable and embarrassment. I think an apology should be issued to the fans of this franchise. I just can't believe the level of carelessness that we saw just this last week from the Richmond wankers, wanking themselves left and right and left and right. Unbelievable. If you look at this roster, pull up the game, one thing you'll notice, no starting defensive back. You are coming down to the wire in the biggest game of your season. The playoffs are on the line, and you know it's going to come down to a few points, and you're going to leave your DB spot empty. And don't give me this, well, if we had known earlier in the week it was going to be close, we would have picked somebody up. You had Robbie Anderson sitting on your bench on Monday night, a player you could have dropped and picked up any defensive back playing in the game, any of them. You knew it was going to come down to a handful of points, and you don't want to take a second to look at your roster. Instead, you decide to go ahead and wank the entire franchise, the entire league. Without you got 2 managers, you got 2 people, and you can't look at a full roster versus an empty roster. It's unbelievable. It's unprofessional. I would be embarrassed to be a wanker, and I am very thankful that I own the Wankers' first-round draft pick of this season, because their carelessness landed me in the lottery. But seriously, can you call yourself a manager in this league? You're not managing anything behaving like that. That's what I've got to say. All right, what you got number 4?
Well, number 4, I looked internal. All right, looked at my own organization, wanted to make sure, that there wasn't this bias. All right. I will revisit what I said earlier. The Cooper Kupp decision was still going into the season. It would have been foolish of me not to commit wholeheartedly. That being said, if I had only known, if there was even the slightest bit of a warning that Jonathan Taylor was going to entirely disappear from the league, we would not have sold ourselves out for this super team. As I said, going into the season, Jonathan Taylor was a top 4 fantasy points for player. All right, top 4 player going into the year. We are now heading into week 15 into the playoffs, and Jonathan Taylor has averaged 13 points per game. 13 points per game. I wish I had done more research so I could reference other players that are averaging 13 points per game throughout the season, but Jonathan Taylor on a $142 contract, one of the richest salaries in the league, is putting up 14 points per game. I will give myself a pat on the back by not re-signing him at the beginning of the year, but not re-signing him at the beginning of the year instead of waiting, knowing that I could franchise him for essentially the same amount. Praise the fantasy gods that I did that, because $142 for 13 points per game is absolutely unbelievable. And the fact the Buenos Aires Capybaras made the playoffs with that severe handicap is one of the toughest and most gritty examples of a team fighting through adversity that I've seen, as Jonathan Taylor stood in the backfield and did virtually nothing throughout the year. So that is mine.
Well, jumping into number 3, we talked earlier about this horrible mismanagement of draft picks, and there is no greater example than we saw this season from the St. Louis Iron Thumbs. November 10th, late in the season, long enough to know what you're getting into, the St. Louis Iron Thumbs deal a first-round draft pick for Cordero Patterson. What? A 34-year-old running back on a one-year deal that was at that point coming off a 6-week injury, and you're going to give up a first-round draft pick? Cordero, luckily, made sure to make us all aware by following up with a 3-point performance that week, averaging 7 points on the season since. So you're upset about Jonathan Taylor, imagine having it. And for a first-round draft pick, I would have considered giving a third for Cordero Patterson. But wow, right up on the trade deadline to make a move like that, there are plenty of players around the league you could have invested a first-round pick and got something back for. I don't know what St. Louis thought they had around the corner. They've already got a team stacked with 3 top running backs. They don't have a 4th running back start to even start Patterson, so he's ridden on the bench. And giving up a first-round pick for something like that, one of the worst management decisions made all season. So that's number 3. And number 2 and 1, I mean, do we just need to group these together as the single? Do you have one outside of the one that we both have just sitting here waiting for the top of the list?
I believe we are on the same page. We may have different comments to make. I will say we are nearing in on 7.5 minutes left in our program, so we will need to be rather short with it. But yes, I'll let you go ahead, and I'll touch up and add something if I'd like to. But we are in agreement on this one. It takes both spots.
Yeah, number 2 and number 1 easily goes to the summer sausages. Selling out your entire future far too late in the season, but having a door open to make the playoffs. At the stellar roster, you don't even need a high point. You just need to come out and perform decently. To lose back-to-back games by less than 5 points, if I had to think of the fantasy football equivalent of, there being a fly ball in the air to win the College World Series and it hits the turf, it's this moment. I know Barrett wouldn't know anything about an experience like that, but man, to have that happen on this stage, it would probably be the most embarrassing moment of my life if I were Barrett. Again, I can't think of any sporting experience that would have been a bigger heartbreak than what we saw here. So, I mean, truly a shame. You can add whatever color you want, but I think to do that and follow it up by tanking the last week and gifting you a playoff spot, I don't understand what the thought process was at the end of the season.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. The sellout. I mean, I had three different screen grabs of Dusseldorf trades that they made that I was like, this doesn't make any sense. You didn't make the playoffs. How am I finding 3 separate trades that you did in an attempt to reach the playoffs when we're already week 10 and you're struggling to even stay in the race? In the more competitive record-wise, not points for-wise, record-wise conference, it seemed like buckle down, get ready for the year ahead. A couple one-year contracts he traded away future draft picks for, and then to lose those back-to-back weeks, really crushed him there. I will say I am forever indebted to the Dusseldorf Summer Sausages. I truly am, for the the decision they made going into Week 14, knowing that they were not making the playoffs, essentially giving a giant screw you to the Richmond Wankers, who would have easily made the playoffs if I had just lost the game. Only scoring 92 points, he could have just fielded Jarek McKinnon and a couple of others, Daniel Jones, Justin Jefferson. Those three guys alone, I think, would have beat me. Instead, he goes and he signs free agents for $1, throws the game, and I'm not sure if he was aware, and I was going to be the last one to mention it beforehand, but he also lost $5 of his cap space for next year based on that decision because it was rivalry week. I will say I will not slight Barrett as a person, as a human. I love him for making this decision, but that on first point on all the trades, dumbfounded. And the last one, I mean, I woke up and when I checked the roster and saw that he had not started a single player until you sent that message, I mean, I was grinning ear to ear. And then I woke up after you had sent the message the next day and saw that he signed $1 free agents. I couldn't stop smiling. It's beautiful. So his decision, as much as it tops our list, all the trades, all that kind of stuff, bless you, Barrett, bless you. All right, and we are nearing
that is the not top 10 of the season. So just a quick, finish to the show, real quick. Andrew, I mean, looking at the playoffs, who do you have as your favorite for the title, and maybe a sleeper pick outside of your own team do you think could make a run here?
Outside of my own team, man. Okay, well, we're going to go with playoff prediction first. Mine goes to the Possum Grape Scramblers. That 7-0 start to the season really kicked them into gear and just gave them such a head start on the rest of the league that they had such a man. They dropped 3 straight, I believe, those next 3 weeks, or at least 2 straight, I know. Finishing the season 4-3, yeah, not their best performance, but the roster they compiled at the beginning of the season, the way they've stayed true to their guys, the longevity of their players, I believe. I know it's a simple answer, but the 11-3 team, the team that's dominated throughout the regular season, the high point of the league, they're my favorites to win the 2022 FFL season. And then a sleeper pick, or you can go.
Go ahead. I mean, I was just going to say my favorite, I think, is actually going to be the St. Louis Iron Thumbs. I think their path through, whoever it is that Possum Grapes can have to see in the second round. They are 4-3 in the last 7 weeks. They're going to have a tough matchup in the semifinals. I think St. Louis could pretty easily breeze into the finals. And then it's just about having 1 week. He's got the right players. He's got health on the roster. I think St. Louis could be looking at a championship as the favorite on my end. What were you going to say for your sleeper pick?
My sleeper pick, and I will admit I did have Buenos Aires Capybaras stepping up to the plate and really fighting through. Again, getting into the playoffs on the final week. Last year, actually, after the final week, when we did our league-wide vote, they got in simply by, I think, 2 votes. I would have to go with the winner of that game, which if it's not Buenos Aires, then I'll say the Baghdad Reaper Drones. I believe that the winner of this game, both teams 6-8, but both teams very competitive throughout the season, throughout the whole entire first half of the season, and up until probably about week 12, they were 2 of the top 5 teams in points for. I think they can turn on the Jets and they can run through St. Louis and potentially Possum Grape, or if Possum Grape gets upset, I think that'll just make the championship game that much more in their favor of being the underdogs.
I also have Baghdad Reaper Drones as my favorite sleeper to come out. Again, I think having basically a bye week in the first round is going to be super helpful. I think there are more weeks that Buenos Aires has been under 100 points than over the last handful of weeks. So, I think that'll be pretty much a bye. And you walk into, what should be kind of a heavyweight knockout battle between them and St. Louis. Win there, and you're in the championship, have a chance at making a run here. Baghdad's got the roster, just hasn't really put it together. Making some trades before the deadline, losing some of their best players, in that trade with Dusseldorf, kind of leaves a little maybe hesitancy on my part, but I think they've got the right pieces that maybe can pull together some big weeks. So that's what I've got. Andrew, is there anything you want to say signing off to the league? Thanks for putting this together. Glad to be on here today to kind of talk through some of the high points of our season.
Definitely, and we're gonna have to continue discussion at some point to talk about the Sacco and talk about what our predictions are there. Maybe just in the league group chat, voice our thoughts there. Man, it's been a pleasure hosting this show with you. I look forward to doing it future times. Man, yeah, this has been a grueling year for the Buenos Aires Capybaras, but I will tell you all, you had better have one eye open when you fall asleep, because before you know